Hey everybody, I'm Brooke.
I'm Ashley. So for our service project, we wanted to compare and contrast the differences between communication patterns with younger children and older adults.
And to start off this video we have for you guys, here's a clip.
Did you get your Rico de Mayo? Have you been making any burritos?
Say hello to the camera.
Go to hell.
Yeah, you made it.
Be good, Grandma.
I won't.
Water tank.
Go fish.
Yep.
Old ladies
another
that
word
go
for
after
MILF.
young boys.
Like grandma.
Cougar.
Whoops. Can you imagine that? My pants fell down.
What are you doing here?
My gracious sakes. Can you imagine that? Huh?
Make a wish and blow the candle.
I wish I can satisfy my wife.
Oh no! Oh, I hate it. No, I hate it.
You actually ate it?
I really hate it.
Well, it
I'm too sexy for my wine. I paid $2.49. It makes me feel so fine. No, what else? I farted. No, I wasn't funny, dumb. Go away, guy. That's not funny, honey.
Seashells by the seashore. Do it. Say it.
She sells seashores by the seashore. She all right. Oh. Hold it up.
What's that say?
I don't know.
Let me see.
This on my tummy?
yeah. Start up there. Go, 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 go. Here you go.
They're probably sending somebody.
I don't want to damn minute.
Emergency.
I'm testing.
Emergency recorded.
Okay, so for our service project, we split it up into two sections. So the hours that we did together, we were able to go to the Golden Skyline Assisted Living here in Ephraim, and we were able to work with some of the older people there and be able to go play games with them. Like we played cornhole and bingo, and it was a lot of fun. And then for the second part, I went to the elementary school here in Ephraim, and I worked with the STAR program there, and that is a reading tutoring program to help kids become better readers where they might be struggling. And so I was able to help teach them there and work with kids with that.
And then where I'm more focused on, as in like the kids age group, I went to a daycare, more so younger aged kids than elementary, and got to see them as they interact with other friends there. But then I also watched two kids on my own as like a kind of a job thing. And so there I get to take the two kids to, tumbling and their everyday home life stuff and run them through homework through preschool, stuff like that. And so throughout both these experiences for us, we noticed a bunch of similarities and differences between both age groups. And some of those included verbal and nonverbal communication. This would probably be the biggest one that we noticed, between the two age groups as a difference. And other than that, we noticed social comparison between themselves and their peers, and also how we communicate with them. And we noticed their use of Maslow's hierarchy and guidelines for expressing emotion as well.
So the first thing that we wanted to go more into depth with was the verbal and nonverbal aspect of the communication between the two age groups. So first off, verbal communication are the actual words that you say or the content in the messages that you actually verbally give. Where nonverbal communication comes a lot more from your body language or your facial expressions or kind of the actions or the things that you do.
The thing that we noticed most about this subject in particular was that elderly people, they have to use their verbal communication. They don't have the energy or the strength that the kids have to do things that they want to do. Kids, like they'll run and get stuff or do stuff themselves, and then you kind of have to ask them, like, hey, what are you doing? And then they'll use their words to tell you afterwards. Where with the elderly, if they want something, they can't go get it, especially in the assisted living aspect of things. They are there to be taken care of and to have people watch over them and see what they need. And so they have to use their words to get across what they mean, where kids, they act things out and do whatever they want in that form.
So kind of an example of this that I saw with tutoring the kids in the elementary school is whenever they didn't really want to do their work, they would kind of just fiddle around and ask like, oh, I'm gonna go get a drink, or they're gonna get up and kind of play with things or fidget to distract themselves so they don't have to get to work as quickly. And then also with the more verbal communication with the assisted living, there was a time when they would ask, can you help me with this? I'm not sure what I'm doing. Will you help me with this? And so they did use the verbal a lot more.
Another example that I kind of noticed was when we went to the assisted living, there was an old lady there who she was getting pretty cold, which it was usually pretty warm in there anyway, but she, had to tell somebody, hey, I'm getting really cold. And when I was watching the kids, this little 2-year-old girl, she was out, playing the snow sledding, and she's just shivering, but she wouldn't tell us that she's cold because she doesn't want to go inside and stop playing. So, yeah. Another big thing that we noticed between the two age groups as a similarity was social comparison. And social comparison is just, how you compare yourself to those around you. Even if you don't realize it, you're doing this subconsciously. You're, saying that you're greater or lesser than those around you, or, this is better or this is worse. With that kind of thing, and you also, try to fit in or try to stand out from those around you as well.
And between the two age groups, there wasn't too much of a difference. They were actually really similar with the social comparison, because the kids would look at each other, and if someone was misbehaving, so another kid would use that as an excuse for them to misbehave. Or if everyone else was really focused and doing well on their work, then it encouraged others to do the same. And same with the older folks. They would look around at their peers to see kind of how they should behave or where they fit in with the rest of the group.
As an example of this, we played cornhole with the elderly women at the assisted living, and when we set it up, there was a side that was a yellow, cornhole spot, and there was a blue. And 98% of the time, they would always throw it into the yellow one. And even one of the elderly women there, she even pointed it out, and she was always super scared to get up and go in front of everybody and do that. But she would always say, which one should I go to? Which one should I go to? And we'd let her pick, and every time she'd pick the yellow one. And she even pointed out after that everyone is using the yellow one, and so she just wanted to fit in with them.
And then also we noticed not just between them with their peers, like even between us working with the kids and with the elderly people, that feeling of like superiority, which kind of sounds bad, just because when you're working with kids, especially like in a tutoring situation or like responsibility, you feel responsible for them, and like you are the one that has to take care of them, and so you get that feeling of superiority. And same with the old folks, where you feel like they can't do everything for themselves, and so if they need anything, you're supposed to be the one to do it or know how to fix something should something come up. So we just definitely noticed that.
I even caught myself a few times, not meaning to, but kind of treating the elderly people like they were a child, almost, saying like, are you okay? Like little sayings like that, which I noticed that, and I try to do better at treating them, like an adult rather than a child. And so that's something that I think we all should realize and take into consideration as well.
So the next aspect of communication that we wanted to talk about was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this basically is like a pyramid. You build your way up from the bottom, and you have to make sure the bottom is taken care of before you worry about any of the top levels. So it starts going from bottom to the top, your physical needs, and then it goes to your safety needs, and then after your safety needs come your social needs, and then your self-esteem and self-actualization. And we noticed this happened a lot with the two age groups, and there were a lot of similarities, but there were also a few differences.
With kids, I noticed, obviously kids we had to take care of them because they can't take care of themselves as an adult would be able to, They can't take care of their physical needs. They constantly put themselves in danger of being hurt all the time. You always have to tell them, hey, don't sit on the chair like that. You're going to fall over. Be careful. Stuff like that all the time. You also have to, drag them away from playing with their friends to get them to sit down and eat and stuff like that. So with the kids, they kind of bounce. They kind of fluctuate back and forth between, the levels of it.
And with the elderly people, there was a lot of focus, but it was more on the lower levels of the pyramid because it was a lot harder for them to meet those needs than maybe for the kids. Like we were talking earlier, there was one lady that she was cold, and so she asked someone to go get her a blanket, but she didn't want to play the game until she had her blanket and was warmed up again. So that was where she was more focused on her physical needs. And so, you can see how that plays out in every day with both age groups.
Yeah, so both of these, they always say they follow their physical needs. If they fall and get hurt, they're both going to stop playing, but there's also differences between the two as well. The last thing that we kind of noticed between the two age groups was how they express their emotion, the guidelines behind it. And what that is just, kind of realizing your own feelings about certain situations and how you handle them with others, realizing, I can understand where they're coming from. And obviously the kids were the worst at this because they don't, realize, what other people think. But there was also some times where the elderly kind of didn't follow this very well either.
So with the kids don't have a lot of experience with this because they are younger and they haven't had that life experience to see how it should be done. A lot of times kids are really blunt and rude at times, and there's times you have to tell the kids, hey, we don't say that, that's not a nice thing to say. And so they're definitely weren't as good in that way. But the adults, at the same time, they are more tactful in the way that they express their emotions or things like that. But sometimes the message still comes across a little rude.
And along with that, it was, you kind of have to realize your own feelings and your own, and be able to express them. Where when we were at the assisted living, there was an old lady there, and she wanted there to be a garbage can to throw something away. And instead of asking for it, she kind of just hinted towards it by saying, man, I wish there was a garbage can in here, and kind of didn't throw a fit about it, but kind of did, but even though there was a garbage can in there, just to get her away.
Yeah, so it was very interesting to see how the difference between life experience a little bit between how the kids would express their emotions and how the adults would. Because, like we said, there are some similarities, but it was also a little different, so it was pretty interesting.
All in all, this service project was really good for us in, realizing our communication, how we interact with those around us, versus the elderly people and people our age as we see every day, and then seeing how we act with kids as well. The things that I think we need to look back on most are the verbal and nonverbal communication. When you're around both of these groups, and you need to take into consideration how both of those sides are coming across, what they're saying and how they say it. And social comparison is also a big one. Like I said earlier, how I kind of almost talk to the elderly as if they were a child. We need to realize that they've been where we've been, and that we don't have to treat them like that because they understand more than we realize, I think.
Yeah, and then also just taking into consideration how Maslow's hierarchy affects our communication, because I think it's a thing that a lot of us forget about until we're having a problem with it. And so it's really important to make sure when you're communicating with someone that there isn't any confusion with that. Like, no one's gonna be wanting to go play a game or something if they're really hungry or something. So, like, just taking that into consideration, and also for how we express our emotions. I think a lot of the time we need to kind of be like the elderly people and be really tactful in the way that we do it so how we express ourselves doesn't come across as rude. But there are times when it happens, but we just really need to be cautious and really watch the way we do that in order to avoid offending someone or something like that.
But yeah, so all in all, I think that we both appreciated our time with both groups, and we want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen.
Thanks.